Hello friends and subscribers, Totally Brown, Ghost Rider USA, and many others. I just thought it's a month today since the Quigley Match started, so I had a little time to review in my mind what happened, and I looked at a little bit of quite a few of the pictures, and I've looked at my hand loading information, etc., and I'd just like to share a few thoughts I had on the match. Extremely well run. A very professional organization. Kudos to Patrick, the president of the Forsyth Rifle Club, who described it as appearing well on the outside, but chaos in behind. But I didn't see any of that. It was exceedingly well run. About the match, if you were considering doing it, I would highly recommend it. There's lots and lots of vendors. Doug, for example, had a major malfunction on his rifle, and he was able to take it to one of the vendors' tents, and they repaired it in 10 minutes for a nominal cost. You'll need shooting sticks. You can probably make them yourself, but they're for sale at the match. I think I paid $35 for the ones I bought, and they were wonderfully finished, wonderfully made. Couldn't make them myself for that. The ground is really hard. It's at the match site. The ground is extremely hard at the firing lines. It probably wouldn't hurt to have a little rubber mallet along to pound the sticks into the ground, because it's hard to describe how hard it is. You're set up in relays of anywhere from about 8 to 14 people. When you register for the match, you're given a wristband that has a yellow band on it or a red band, and that indicates which of the two targets on your relay you're supposed to shoot at, whether it be right, yellow, or red, left. So that makes the scorer's jobs quite a bit simpler. And then you go into relays with, for example, I was yellow, so you're all with yellow people. There's 6 stations. You shoot 4 stations the first day and 2 stations the second day. If you're shooting black powder, you have time as the shooters go down the line. You each fire a shot, 8 shots at each station. You fire a shot, you go to the next person, all the way around in a loop until everybody has fired 8 shots. And you have time between your shots to run a cleaning rod through your black powder rifle to swab it out between shots. So you have to hustle, but there's time to do it. It's a very relaxed atmosphere with an emphasis on safety first, and fun, certainly. All the competitors that I encountered on the line, directly or indirectly, had a great sense of sportsmanship. There was nobody whining or chirping about whether they scored or a hit or they didn't score a hit or the scorer was right or wrong. Nothing like that. The scorer spoke, and that's the way it was. I had a person to my right, a spotter, say I think it was a hit, and the scorer said fine, it's a hit. So there was no chirping about it, which is nice. Something you don't see much in Canada, unfortunately. Targets are very challenging. The wind. It's windy in that part of Montana. It's probably windy in all of Montana, but it's particularly windy. Doug and I had 2 days to practice ahead of time. 1 day for me, 1 day for him. If you have time to do that, I would highly recommend it, because when you get out to the range, you get out to the firing line, you get registered, and you go out and you practice, and you think, wow, this is going to be really, really tough. And it is. I would hate to think what it would be like just to arrive at the match with no practice or minimal practice and just come up the line and shoot. Obviously, far better shooters than I am would do that, but That's not who I am. I need a little bit of reinforcement. So bring enough ammunition to do that. You'll need 48 loaded rounds of ammunition to complete the course. But I would recommend bringing double or treble that at least. I had 180 rounds of ammunition, and when I finished, when we headed home, I had 8 rounds left. So I did a lot of shooting, and I would bring a good umbrella, because we got sunburned brutally despite applying the sunscreen repeatedly. It's just the sun there is much brighter, it seems, than in rural Ontario. I bring lots of water. There's water and there's stuff to drink there at the vendors, but I can't describe how dry I would get in no time, even on the line. I mean, my tongue stuck right to the roof of my mouth dry. And it was so hot there. It's hard to describe. It was in the mid 80s the time we were there, but it just seemed, with the wind and the sun, it just dried everything out, and it's very dry in that part of Montana. There's no cover to speak of. There's no trees on the range, so there's no place to get out in our cover. So parasol or really good umbrella, sunscreen. Bring a cart along to bring along your gear, your rifle, your ammunition, your cleaning supplies, all the stuff you need. Lots of people had homemade buggies. Some people had purchased little golf carts, not motorized, but just basically fancy golf bags on wheels, and they had everything in it. It's just so much stuff to carry. And the shooting line is exceedingly long from the very first station to the last station, so you got a lot of gear to move around. So and because it's so hot, you get where I'm going. Bring extra money, because there's vendors there with a lot of unique stuff: brass, bullets, powder, books, reloading supplies, and of course gorgeous rifles everywhere. Many for sale. Take lots of time to take photographs and time to talk to people, because there's people there from all over. There are people there from Australia, from Europe, from South Africa, and they just have absolutely gorgeous rifles and wonderful stories. So it's important that you, in my opinion, that you take that time to get to talk to some of the people. A little town, Forsyth, which is 11 miles from range, is where we stayed. They had a major malfunction with their water, and they had no water. So the first 2 days that we were there, you couldn't wash, couldn't drink anything, so you had to either buy bottled water or have nothing to drink or nothing to wash in. And it took them several days. In fact, by the time we left, they still had no drinking water. Water for washing, but no drinking water. So I don't expect that's something you would run into next year, but it's something we never expected would happen. So have a cooler with water or whatever. Make sure that you buy some sandwiches or something to munch in. There are vendors there with some food, but I think it's important to have a sandwich there or something handy. The wind is very challenging, so it's and it changes constantly. Many people were adjusting their windage on their sights, and that's probably sound advice. For me, I'm kind of a Kentucky windage shooter. I just found you could be spinning your windage knob with a Black & Decker. make sure it had a reverse button, because the wind was chasing. You were chasing the wind constantly. It would be strong one way, and then by the time the relay came around to you again, it would be strong the other way. And because of the topography of where the Quigley is held, it's surrounded by these large hills on the back of the targets and behind you. So in a way, it's kind of bowl-shaped. So the wind would come in largely westerlies, but I can recall numerous times that the wind would be strong in my face, and then when the relay came around to me, it would be strong behind me. And yeah, that's challenging. So you've really got to have a strong idea of your wind charts for sure. And something I did is I did extensive chronographing when I developed the loads for my rifle. I was shooting a 40-65 in a Sharps rifle, so I didn't have the big power of the 45-90s, the 45-100s, but I had velocity. I was shooting smokeless powder, so I chronographed the bullet at the muzzle, at 100 yards, and at 200 yards, and I developed a real-world ballistic coefficient for the bullet, and then developed drop tables accordingly. And I found my drop tables for my rifle were spot on. I didn't have a lot of trouble with excluding the wind. I didn't have a lot of trouble hitting the targets. I set up my vernier sights for the windage, or for the elevation rather. I spent a lot of time with that. I spent about a month, almost about 5 weeks, carefully setting up my verniers for the various ranges. And I found mine were spot on. Definitely bring a little magnifying glass with you so you can read your vernier sightings. On my Tang sight, the readings are quite small. So that's something to do, is get your elevations. Because one thing to be struggling with the windage, and it's quite another to add complication of not having your elevation right. It's so I suppose there are a few things to think about. I can't recommend it enough. It's not something that I had any interest in prior to being invited by the fellow I went with, Doug. The idea was that I was going with this to be his spotter at this match, and it just so happened that 2 days after he invited me in, I walked into a gun store in rural Ontario, and there was a beautiful Sharps rifle there in 40-65 with brass, dies, bullets, everything ready to go. That was, to me, I took that as a sign. I just want to thank Toadley Brown for all the wonderful advice he gave me on shooting black powder, shooting a cast bullet rifle. He sent me a wonderful email with great detail. So check out Toadley Brown's channel. He makes videos occasionally, and he's got a large library of videos. So thanks, Toadley Brown. I just, perhaps in the comments, if you have any other specific questions, I can try to answer them. A lot of women there, surprisingly, a lot of women, but for the most part, the majority of shooters would be kind of my vintage. But be prepared to see a lot of beautiful rifles, and be prepared for constantly changing conditions, both wind, light, and of course each relay you shoot at a different distance, so you're going to be changing your sightings. So that being said, thanks so much for tuning in. This has turned into a lot longer than I expected, but that's my assessment of the Quigley. Thanks so much for tuning in.